What is going on, guys? It is Wrestlelamia here, back with some more news. Join us now as we look at the wildest wrestling news stories and rumors you need to know, including Roman Reigns criticized backstage, the real reason behind WWE cancelling Raw Underground, Eddie Guerrero's daughter returning to wrestling, the return of Bryan, and much more. Be sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell for daily wrestling videos and follow us on Facebook for exclusive lists. Now let's hit the intro and get straight into the first story. Now our first story looks at Roman Reigns being criticized backstage. Has Roman Reigns' success gone to his head? That seems to be the narrative that the WWE is presenting, but we aren't so sure, as recently Braun Strowman talked to Sportskeeda about the Universal Champion. He mentioned, saying that and that being said, I don't know where this attitude and smug chip on his shoulder that he's got since he's come back. I don't know if it's because he's got this parasite Paul Heyman in his ear, filling his head up full with all this crap and stuff like this. But at the end of the day, I feel like he is carrying the Universal entitlement. Just his attitude, his whole new attitude. I'm not really a fan of it, and I don't think too many of the guys are in the locker room. Now, rather than an actual shoot, we think that Strowman's comments are more about hyping his Universal Championship match on tonight's SmackDown than about actual heat on Reigns. The comments sound more like a promo, and while it's possible Reigns is generating animosity backstage, there have been no reports from news sites. This story just seems to be the WWE working fans through news sites and should be treated as such rather than an actual news story. Next up, the real reason behind WWE cancelling Raw Underground. And looks as if the WWE's critically acclaimed Raw Underground feature on Raw is over with. The WWE's unsanctioned Fight Club appears to be joining Wobbly Walrus in that great gimmick box in the sky, with this week's Wrestling Observer newsletter revealing Raw Underground for right now is considered done. At first it was dropped because of the COVID breakout and fear the extras who are in the crowd may have been exposed, so it was shut down for a few weeks, but almost everyone who was a part of that breakup is now back. Then again, most were back either this week or last, and this week with the draft, it wouldn't have fit as easily. There was fear that bringing all those people, both the wrestlers and the people they used as the audience, to Raw tapings could start a spread to the Raw roster, and the idea is to keep NXT talent away from Raw and SmackDown talent as much as possible. Now, in all fairness, the feature never really had a chance, as the WWE debuted it with no fanfare and never established what its true purpose was other than filling up time. Like Wobbly Walrus, the segment could return when the time is right, but they would have to fine-tune it before digging it up. Next up, Shaul Guerrero returns to the ring. Wrestling fans get ready for Latino heat, as Eddie Guerrero's daughter Shaul Guerrero is stepping back into the ring after a sabbatical following her time in WWE's Florida Championship Wrestling developmental territory. She left the WWE in 2014 to deal with an eating disorder, but never left wrestling for good as she stayed busy on the indie circuit, including time as a ring announcer. This included a gig in AEW as the ring announcer for its Women's Tag Team Cup tournament. Fightful.com is reporting that Shaul is ready to continue the Guerrero legacy in the ring, as she is set to make her independent wrestling debut on November 13th in Tampa, Florida. Generation Championship Wrestling has added Shaul Guerrero to their women's tournament to crown their next women's champion. We wish Guerrero good luck on her return to the ring and can't wait to see what the future holds for this third generation grappler. Next up, the return of Bryan. A Bryan fan should be happy as the leader of the Yes Movement is scheduled to return to tonight's SmackDown. Bryan, who was drafted by the Blue Brand in order to keep him there, hasn't been on TV since he battled AJ Styles in the Intercontinental Championship tournament. Now heel by nature noted, Bryan's wife Brie expressed concerns in him working due to his weakened immune system. During an episode of the Bellas podcast earlier this year, she spoke on her fears of him working through the pandemic. I don't be surprised to see Bryan competing for the IC Championship against Sami Zayn, renewing their WrestleMania 36 program that was never resolved. Next up, Shane Helms has not been fired. Now, you may recall that Shane Helms was one of the many WWE staff members who found themselves furloughed after the Black Wednesday layoffs. While some WWE staff such as Jerry Briscoe were told they are officially done with the company, Shane says he's holding out for a return to work. During a talk with Wrestling Inc., the former WWE superstar remarked, "Yeah, I guess it's a furloughing until I go back. To me, it's the same thing as being released if I go back or whatever. April 15th, tax day of course always sucks, but it wasn't anything that was unexpected for me anyway. Kinda made sense since I was sitting at home doing nothing, but I've been podcasting for a long time myself, dating all the way back to 2010. The WWE has hired some of its furloughed workers back, so Shane's expectations aren't unrealistic. Next up, does the WWE even care about Raw? Now, according to Dave Meltzer, the promotion's main focus seems to be on keeping Fox happy when it comes to SmackDown's ratings. Meltzer discussed that in the latest Wrestling Observer newsletter, noting how the Blue Brand got 3 of the hottest storylines in the WWE thanks to the draft, this being the Mysterios vs Seth Rollins, Sasha Banks vs Bayley, and Universal Champion Roman Reigns' campaign to dominance on SmackDown. Meltzer noted, "It was noted to us by one key person in WWE that having the 3 big angles all on SmackDown was on purpose because Raw is a lock on USA no matter what because they need the show or USA Network collapses in the ratings. Fox doesn't need SmackDown. Fox is heavily into sports and sports rights are escalating, and the feeling is niche sports and SmackDown on Fox could qualify as that, be in trouble as far as being able to land a good deal. The SmackDown will be fine with current numbers in 2 years, but if they drop 25% each year, that wouldn't be good." Now, anyone familiar with WWE's history with the USA Network knows that Vince McMahon has no loyalty to them, despite Raw debuting on the USA Network and spending most of its time on the cable network. You may recall that WWE moved from USA Network to TNN/Spike TV from 2000 to 2005. It's clear that Vinnie Mac wants to keep its big money arrangement with Fox and that he's confident USA will continue ponying up the big bucks to keep Raw. Next up is Big E's character changing. Now, we recently reported that Big E is getting a serious push on SmackDown, and now rumor has it he'll be undergoing a transformation into a more serious character. Not too long ago, Booker T expressed his concern that Big E needed to take a more serious attitude if he wanted to be taken as a legitimate star. Meltzer recently commented that Big E was split from the New Day to give him a chance to do so. His recent feud with Sheamus showed he can work as a tough man while still maintaining his likability, and the WWE should tread softly or risk ruining his character. Next up, WWE planning a rematch between The Undertaker and John Cena? Now, John Cena has recently got married, but that wasn't the only big news involving the 16-time world champion. As according to the Wrestling Observer Radio, WWE is planning to at least call John Cena and The Undertaker for WrestleMania 37, even if they've got some big marquee matches planned. However, there is a catch. Meltzer believes that the match won't happen unless the WWE is able to hold a pay-per-view in front of fans. There's also the rumored match between The Rock and Roman Reigns, so if that happens, then unfortunately we won't get that rematch. But do you guys want to see this rematch? Let us know in the comments down below. Next up, Sonya's stalker continues to harass her. Sonya Deville's alleged stalker Philip Thomas is reportedly still harassing her thanks to a nasty trick he played when he was arrested. Wrestling Inc. is reporting that Thomas's mail has been going to Deville's home. When Thomas was booked, he apparently gave Deville's address as his own. While the Hillsborough County Jail has corrected the address in their system, the courts still have Thomas's address listed as Deville's. Hopefully the courts have resolved this problem so Deville will not have to deal with any more harassment from Thomas. Speaking of Deville, she's recently been seen together with Mandy Rose, hopefully making a comeback very soon. And finally, why Lars Sullivan's recovery took so long? Lars Sullivan returned to the WWE during Night 1 of the 2020 WWE Draft, his first time on television since the 10th June 2019 Raw, where he suffered a brutal knee injury. Sullivan underwent knee surgery, but apparently took longer to return due to a knee infection. According to this week's Wrestling Observer, Sullivan was nonetheless cleared to return for some time, which suggests the WWE was waiting for the right moment to bring him back to television. But there you have it, guys, the wildest wrestling news stories and rumors you need to know. Be sure to leave your comments down below, subscribe if you haven't already, follow us on Instagram and Facebook for exclusive lists, and I'll see you next time with some more wrestling content.